Yeah, the Security Council Resolution 1325, which was approved 12 years ago, was groundbreaking in identifying at the highest level the potential of women as building peace, security, development, and also to recognize the vulnerability of women in conflict situation and in other security-related situations. Now, to bring that out to real action on the ground is what this action plan is trying to do. Since last year, there has been a group working together under the joint chairmanship of SPC, Femlink, and UNDP to make this action plan. It was mandated by the forum, and it has been recognized by the forum leaders, and therefore it gives it a lot of political space in the region. Now, this allows us to bring together the resources from many different organizations. It allows us to focus jointly on making these things happen. The problem is that the potential of women has been recognized for a long time, but the practice of bringing women actually into peace negotiations or the peace building activities or to governance of security related structures has been very slow. There has not been many women brought on board in a formal sense in this regard, and that is a lost opportunity. That is an opportunity that we need to grasp, and I think this action plan will help us to do that. The action plan has now been handed over to the Forum Secretariat, who will form a committee to put it into practice. And I was very encouraged to see the panel today discussing how we can work on this report, including both the Solomon Islands government, the Australian government, and my UN colleagues. And these are some of the key actors. The governments from Pacific countries all over the Pacific, it's the development partners, and it's UN, CROP, NGOs, who will then have a place to come together and make it reality. For example, from Australia's intervention, I have been impressed to see the 10-year gender equality initiative that they have launched. This is one example, another example of a vision that is needed to make gender equality a reality across the Pacific and to address the imbalances that are there today. I hope these initiatives can come together and that we will be able to bring women on board in an equal way in the future. Step by step, day by day.
With your permission, I would like to call upon Mr. Knut Osby to deliver a remark on behalf of the regional working group.
It was a great honor to be able to take part in the handover today of this important action plan. Let me offer you greetings from the UNDP resident representative and the UN resident coordinator in Papua New Guinea, David McLaughlin-Carr, who has been a co-chair for the working group on our behalf, preparing the action plan, but unfortunately he was unable to attend today due to pressing commitments in Papua New Guinea. But I know he's been a strong representative for the UN and UNDP in this work. Despite all the work which is being done by women for peace and security across the Pacific and across the world, the actual participation and the actual invitations that come to women to take part in formal conflict prevention, formal management of security systems, formal negotiations, post-conflict recovery efforts is very far from being fully realized. And I think this is what the action plan is trying to deal with. We think this is symptomatic also of a broader problem outside the peace and conflict area in terms of very limited political participation by women and also the high levels of sexual and gender-based violence in the Pacific. But we do think it's possible to do something about it. If women's potential is realized, they can make a great difference in making the leader's vision that the Secretary General spoke about a reality. The actual work to develop this regional action plan has been a model for inter-organizational cooperation for a common goal. Many of the parties involved are here today, and I would like to acknowledge in particular the government of Solomon Islands, the FemLink Pacific, the Forum Secretariat, UNFPA, UN Women, and UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who work together with UNDP on the action plan.
Well, UNFPA was very happy to be part of the technical working group that helped in drafting the regional action plan. And we feel that this is really an enabling environment, that we can see from that work done on violence against women, where we've done studies to show that in some countries 2 out of 3 women are experiencing violence at the hands of partners and non-partners. And in some cases that's exacerbated and continues even after the conflict ends and the civil unrest ends. Or in situations where we see civil unrest brewing, and in fact we have noticed around the world that violence in women's lives escalates in those times. So this provides us a platform for addressing those issues in women's lives directly. There are a number of ways that UNFPA is going to be involved, and we made a commitment to support the CEDAW report. We have almost every country has ratified or signed the CEDAW declarations. Now we have to ensure those commitments, the international commitments, are upheld. And so we would support ensuring that there's a multi-sectoral consultation to really determine if the CEDAW convention is being implemented and how laws, how policies can be strengthened. So that's one way. The other way, UNFPA and UN Women work in times of crisis and in humanitarian emergencies, both to prevent violence against women, but to also respond, ensuring that there's health care, for example, available for survivors of violence, ensuring that the NGOs are there to provide psychosocial support. So that's a second way. And then third, around the world, UNFPA has worked on helping countries develop national action plans. So this regional action plan is a enabling environment, but then the national action plans like the one that's being drafted in Solomon Islands can receive some encouragement and some guidance in terms of content for women's participation, enhanced protection, and peace-building efforts.
And it's clearly a very significant day, as shown by the fact that the chair of the forum was prepared to travel from the Cook Islands to be here today to launch it. The enormous support from the Forum Secretariat, from other regional organisations, but also importantly from national governments, and even more importantly, I think, from women's groups in every country around the region. There's been an enormous amount of work go into this, and it really points a way forward to address an issue that we're all very concerned about across the region, access to peace, security, and the capacity for women to play their full role in social and economic affairs of their own countries. Look, as I said, this is an important start, but it's a start. It builds on a lot more work that's gone on beforehand. And really, I can only speak from Australia's perspective on this. At the recent Forum Leaders meeting, the Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, announced that Australia would be providing 320 million Australian dollars over the next 10 years to address exactly these issues. So in the short term, between now and the next forum in August of next year, Australia will be working with regional groupings like the Forum, with national level governments and with women's groups within the countries of the region to develop action plans focused very much on the needs and circumstances of each individual country. We'll be starting with Papua New Guinea, the Solomons, Fiji and the Cook Islands, and looking at issues around women's access to leadership positions and how they might best be supported, women's access to safe marketplaces so that they can play their full role in the economic affairs of their country, women's access to credit, and importantly doing some more to address one of the issues we're all very concerned about, sexual and gender-based violence. We think in the next 2 to 3 years we can make a big impact.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the formalities of the launch of the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. Just for the record, I'm Sharon Bhagwan Rolls. of FemLink Pacific, and as we've seen a little while ago, we've witnessed a very important launch for Pacific Peace Women, activists, and our partners in the launch by the chair of the Pacific Islands Forum and, of course, the Prime Minister of the Cook Islands, Honorable Henry Puna, in the launch of the Regional Action Plan. Through the speeches this morning, we've also heard about the journey to the development of the plan, the collaborative approach to drafting the plan, and forum leaders have also noted that the Regional Action Plan builds on existing commitments. It's now providing a very tangible framework to strengthen the regional peace and security architecture through very practical integration of gender equality and women's rights commitments. It's been a real privilege for me to represent our Regional Women's Media and Policy Network on Security Council Resolution 1325 as the co-chair of the working group in drafting the plan with colleagues from the UN system, the Pacific Islands Forum, and the Secretariat of the Pacific Community. But it's now time to focus on the way forward and the operationalization of the plan. I recall back in 2010, on the 10th anniversary, as the 1325 network, we called for the operationalization of 1325. And now, just days away from the next UN Security Council open debate, which takes place on October 29th at the Security Council, Pacific leaders will be able to share with all the other UN member states that the Pacific now indeed has a regional action plan. So I think it's a very symbolic, but also very significant progress that has been made within what is probably one of the smaller regions of the UN system. And I think it's time to sort of do a little bit of hand clapping as well. So let's congratulate ourselves as Pacific peace builders for what we've been able to achieve since that call at the 10th anniversary. Now, to discuss the way forward, because as civil society, we can't wait. We want to move things forward. We've got the plan. Thanks. Now let's move forward. I have some very wonderful people to introduce to you right now. You've already met, but let's welcome this morning Ethel Sigimanu. Ethel is the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Women, Youth, Children and Family Affairs in the Solomon Islands. We have, thank you, John, for joining us, John Davidson, Minister Councillor of the Australian Agency for International Development, AusAid. Thank you, John, for coming today. Someone who's been a very active member of the technical working group. She's feisty, she's vibrant, she knows what she wants. Rita Taphorn, the Regional Program Manager, Gender Equality in Political Governance Program of UN Women. And Cameron Noble. Cameron, who has been the quiet person behind the scenes, reminding us of how to make things happen. Cameron Noble, the UNDP Conflict Prevention Advisor for the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. I'd like to start with you, Ethel, as we talk about the way forward, but maybe by going back. We've had the acknowledgement this morning of some of us who had the privilege of being on the regional working group, yourself, Helen, myself, but Pacific Peace Women everywhere who have contributed to, actually, if we go back further than 2000, it was Peace Women who said, we need this Security Council resolution. And from your own experience, 2000 was a critical year for many of us in the region. Maybe if you could share with us, as you reflect back, those experiences, what you and Peace Women in the Solomon Islands were doing in 2000 as this Security Council resolution was being drafted, because you did some amazing things, including crossing political barriers. Please, Ethel.
It was not too long ago when Solomon Islands has its fair share of what we call social unrest. It was not a nice picture. And women and children and families were greatly affected. Women at that time also felt that they have the potential to bring about peace, not only as peacemakers, but also as peace builders. At the same time, they capitalized on our traditional norms to go to the militant bankers as mothers, because women knew that the men would listen to them if they approached them as mothers and not be confrontational. And women bring food to the militants, even cigarettes. They dug deep into their pockets to ensure that the dialogue with our militants could be as open and as free as possible. But that is women as peace agents. There is also the downside for women and children, where even in a normal situation, they are being suppressed by society itself, and during conflict, they are even more suppressed in those kind of situations. So the role of women as nurturers and caregivers was greatly challenged as well. And women felt, through the Women for Peace and other women's organizations, that that has to be brought to the attention of our political leaders. And so we did. We discussed with the Prime Minister. We gave them our peace plan to show them this is how we want to contribute to the peace process. So there were a lot of things that women did during the tension. One thing that was noticeable was that despite contributing very positively to the peace process, when it came to the peace negotiating table, women were bystanders. And we felt we have been denied that opportunity to be able to bring meaning, real meaning to what the peace process must be about. Even today, women, peace and security issues are still not being addressed fully and meaningfully by government itself. Hence the reason why we have now embarked on a national action plan for women, peace and security. I hope that...
Thank you, Ethel. Yes, and in fact, I have one more question for you before we talk to Cameron, Rita and John. The development of the National Action Plan, despite all the realities that you faced, the post-conflict situation, you've also had Ramsey in the country to assist with peace and stabilization efforts, and also you've had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. How have these components contributed to building peace, and what do you envisage as the key components for a national action plan?
Well, we have focused ourselves on prevention, protection, participation by women, because that was what was very weak during the peace building process. And of course, we have also singled out the need to look perhaps squarely at implementation. So we've not had implementation as a cross-cutting factor across all the other pillars, but we have singled that out so that equal attention can be given to implementation, because that is often a failure that we experience. So we have picked protection, the issue of protection, prevention, and participation as key pillars.
Key also in the regional action plan as well. So do you see the regional action plan contributing now to this current phase of your national action plan development?
Yes, it is, I think, welcome news for Solomon Islands to know and to acknowledge the fact that we now have a regional action plan. It helps us to bring into prominence the issues on the ground at the regional level, where we also feel that support from our regional leaders, from our regional organizations is crucial for implementation of the National Action Plan on the ground. But it also, I think the RAP for us acts as a compass, because it guides us, it helps us to see to redefine our stance in terms of peace building, and to also see what is necessary to bring to the table so as to ensure that implementation of the National Action Plan is done as effectively as possible.
Thanks, Ethel. I'm going to ask John Davidson, the Minister Councillor of the Australian Agency for International Development, AusAid, to step in here. As Ethel has so eloquently put it, the RAP is a compass for us in our region in defining peace and security, making sure the inclusion of women in these processes, because clearly participation has been a challenge for all of us. The Australian government has recently announced an amazing contribution, a 10-year contribution to gender equality, announced by your Prime Minister at the Pacific Forum meeting. How do you see this responding to the kinds of challenges that Ethel has talked about in developing both, in supporting both regional and national strategies? John?
Look, thank you very much. If we've learnt nothing else about development and working in the region over a very long time, it's that solutions to complex problems of this kind can't be imposed from the outside. The only promise of success is to work with Ethel, to work with the women on Bougainville, to work with the women in this room, to work with the women across the region. So in announcing the 10-year commitment that you mentioned, our Prime Minister offered 320 million Australian dollars over that 10-year period, but was very firm in describing that the way this will be implemented will be looking at the national level, working out on a country-by-country basis, working with the people who are already working in this area on how we might support them and how we might work with them to develop national action plans just of the kind that Ethel has referred to. So very much community-led national focus.
Thank you, John. I'm just wondering also, Australia has got a very new role in the Security Council as well, coming up with the recent elections of Australia to be one of the member states, the non-permanent members of the Security Council. Do you also see yourself taking this issue into that arena, the work of Pacific women, Pacific Forum leaders with that commitment now? Can we look forward to that kind of support at the UN level also from Australia?
At every level. There's no point just focusing on one level. As we know, it's the fact that we haven't been able to have a coordinated response and coordinated action and work to bring us all together to tackle this problem that's got us where we are now. We've achieved some amazing things working together, Australia being able to provide the resources and people such as Ethel and others across the region out there doing the hard work. But the only way that we're really going to make a comprehensive impact on this issue is if we all work together across every venue we can possibly find at every available opportunity.
Thanks, John. When it comes to coordination, particularly at the regional level, obviously the Pacific Islands Forum has a very important role now, and UN Women also, of course, have a stake in this, because you are not just part of the United Nations, but very much a very important gender entity within the UN system. So maybe if I could just start with you, Cameron, as we talk about the operationalization of the Regional Action Plan, and because both you and Rita work both at the regional and country level, how do you see this rolling out? How do you see this being carried forward?
Well, one of the first steps that the Secretariat will be doing will be setting up a reference group for the implementation of the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. And that'll be based on the model that was set up by the reference group on sexual and gender-based violence that has been going for a couple of years now. That model has been working very well, so we're hoping to replicate that, and that'll call in the main members of the working group that have been working so hard up until now to get to this point, but also be working with a number of forum member countries. What we really hope, the work that Ethel has been doing and the Solomon Islands government as a whole in developing a national action plan is very important for us, even at the regional level, because that can become a model for other countries. Other countries can see the value of it, and so we're very much looking forward to the participation of Ethel and her other colleagues from the Solomon Islands government in the reference group to provide that expertise on how to do this at the national level to the other countries.
Thanks, Cameron. Rita, You have a very interesting background also actually in peacekeeping as well before you've joined the UN system and working very clearly on issues of political participation of women. Participation is a clear pillar. How do you see that connecting with the broader priorities of UN Women, and how do you envisage overcoming some of those challenges, particularly where we continue to face, as Ethel has said, we have the commitments, the highest level of commitments from Pacific leaders, but when it comes to the local or national, it gets blocked.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon and fellow panel members. It's indeed a priority of UN Women to ensure that women's political participation is there at all levels, particularly during conflict solution-finding periods, but also during the general times of decision-making. And unfortunately, all over the world, we see that women are not really at an equal footing in comparison to men. So there is the need for reforms, and there is a need and acknowledgement also at global level that there are methods that can be adopted, such as temporary special measures, to help women to overcome the many obstacles that they face. But sometimes it's hard to actually implement those, because even though there's a commitment by leaders or by donors or by partners, people that are the decision makers now, they don't really know all the factors, and they are not exactly conversed well with reforms that they could take. So there's need for capacity building, so that those that are decision makers today can help to open the doors for people that also can be future decision makers. So in the context of UN Women, we are working with the countries in the Pacific to show them options of reform. We try to partner with them, the electoral commissions, but also the PM's offices and the different ministries, as well as the Ministry of Women, but very much also with the local women's groups, to help them to come together in dialogue, because a lot of times they don't. And I think this is really an opportunity with the Regional Action Plan. They can now use this as well as a forum of seeking dialogue and finding joint solutions, because that's what it's all about.
Thanks, Rita. John, just coming back to you, because certainly the multi-million 10-year initiative from the Australian government is basically saying, we believe in this, this is what we're investing in. But are you having conversations with other development agencies? Because obviously Australia can't do it alone. Other national governments, how do you see this? How do you see the kind of leverage that is needed as a collective of development partners helping the Regional Action Plan, but as Rita and Ethel have said, making it happen at the country level?
I think the commitment that was provided by forum leaders in the Cooks is a pretty good start. But as I said earlier, this isn't the 100-yard dash. We're in this for the long run. This is the marathon. We've been at it for a long time. There are some fabulous people in this room who've been at it for a lot longer than me. I'm very much a bit player. It's the people in this room and their colleagues who are making this work, and they're the people we want to work with. And if development partners are interested in becoming involved, and I'm sure that they are, my colleagues in this room hold very similar views to all of us, but the major issue isn't about the development partners, it's about the people on the ground who are doing the work. So in terms of getting women into positions where they can have their voices heard, that's a large chunk of the $320 million. In providing access to safe markets so that women can play a full role without fear of sexual or gender-based violence in the social and economic life of their countries, that's part of this as well. Mentoring women leaders across the region with women parliamentarians at all levels out of Australia is part of this. So it really, but again, it's only a small part. We need to be looking at this in a very comprehensive way. It's a long-run issue, and we look forward to working with everybody on it.